Hello, my name is Aaron Wilkowitz, and I am with YIMBYs of Northern Virginia. I live in the West Falls Church area in the Drainsville district. My organization, YIMBYs of Northern Virginia, says yes to more housing, yes to more neighbors. And that's why I enthusiastically support the zMod legislation. To talk through that in a little bit more detail, the headline for me is that the lawsuit that's throwing out zMod was highly questionable, right? The idea that we were not in an emergency in the middle of COVID, that we were not in some completely different space in the middle of COVID is absolutely absurd. There's no reason why this should have been thrown out. There were hundreds of meetings that happened, hundreds of hours of testimony and thoughts from the community. This was not a lack of transparency. And if anything, having everything done virtually allows people like me to participate because it's very difficult for me to be there in person. So everything about the lawsuit was incredibly questionable. And the decision to throw it out was even more questionable. It's unfortunate that that happened. That said, zMod is critical for the updates that it's making to our zoning code. Otherwise, we're using zoning from 1978, which is not optimal at all. So it's really important that we pass zMod with the exact same language, because the same kind of procedural problems that occurred through this lawsuit could potentially occur if we change any of the language. So to make things as easy as possible, as streamlined as possible, it made sense to pass zMod in the exact same language, because that's the thing that everybody was so excited about and what was sort of compromised around back in 2021. Now, that said, while we should not make any changes to zMod right now, I do think we should talk about and think about loosening up some of the ALU changes potentially in the future. Let's talk through that for just a second. So first of all, ALUs, right, accessory living units, they really are quite important. It's a very efficient way to offer affordable housing for folks who are older and for folks who have lower socioeconomic status. There's usually a minimal increase in parking and a minimal increase in school overcrowding because the kind of people who live there typically don't have children or don't have children living with them, and they're not going to schools, and they oftentimes don't even have cars. Right, so it's a win-win for small homeowners to provide housing for people that are likely experiencing a crisis of housing. Right, so it's really, really important that we have them. And I'll tell you that around Northern Virginia, there's been a huge increase in the number of companies that allow for ALUs and actually build ALUs. This is one example that I looked at for myself, a room that builds ALUs for you, it's in Loudoun County, and these kind of experiences are becoming much more common. But the problem is that right now in Fairfax, we're stuck, right? Even with the zMod improvements, for you to have a detached ALU, you have to have at least 2 acres of space. Just to speak briefly to my situation, my wife and I wanted to build an ALU. We have the space, we wanted the extra cash flow, we wanted to help someone in need. We have plenty of space on our lot. We've got a big lot. The problem is that's only 0.28 acres, and so it's not enough. So even though we want to build an ALU, we can't. So again, pass zMod and exactly the language that it has today, but let's look to change ALUs in the future. Thank you very much.